Boy, when you take on a role, you dive into it. And in here, the whole look, everything achieved, the prosthetics, what was that process like? That must have been a few
Itchy.
hours. Easy, huh?
No, it was itchy.
Oh.
It was itchy, smelly, and hot.
Oh, really? Yeah.
No, that was equally fascinating to me. I was mesmerized watching, Ari, and I call him the wizard, every day come in there with his little pieces that he'd made by hand and, painted by hand right down to the last freckle. And it's about 4.5 hours to begin. And then as we got it more finely tuned, we got down to about 2.5.
Oh.
And yeah, so just a lot of laughter because they're dynamic and they have personalities of their own and they don't always behave properly, the prosthetics,
Yes,
Yeah,
right?
so one day is not like the next, depending on the weather, the temperature, if you're inside or outside, and the glue liquefies underneath.
Oh, God.
So you start out as one thing and then you end up as, Swamp Thing by the end of the day.
I do.
You may take the stand. State your name for the record.
Pamela Hupp, H-U-P-P.
And you're the defendant, the party being sued in this lawsuit?
Mm-hmm. I can hardly hear you.
Did you hear the question?
I did.
Judge, I'd like to treat the witness as hostile at this time.
You may.
You just raised your hand, and you took an oath to tell the whole truth, correct?
Yes.
The same oath you took when you testified in the Russell Faria trial.
Yes.
You understood at that time that you were obligated to testify truthfully, and you did, correct?
Mm-hmm. I have traumatic brain injury and concussion syndrome from an accident.
Did you have any of these memory problems during that deposition?
I didn't think I did. I don't feel like I do when I'm talking, but I obviously do.
We have crossed paths over many years and many different movies
Many
and things.
cities.
And here this astonishes me, a network television series, no less. Everybody's doing streaming and everything now.
Kind of fun, right?
It's fun. The thing about Pam is what brought you to this, and I can see why, because what a role, my gosh.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, isn't it?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quirky, it's absurd as it can possibly be, and I guess it's still going on in many iterations for Pam Hupp. But tell me how you decided to get involved with this, because you had just won the your second Academy Award, for lead actress for Judy. And I don't know that you had any movies going or anything at that moment, but this popped into your life somehow.
Yeah. My producing partner at Big Picture Company, my production company, sent the podcast to me. She thought, there's something to this that might be interesting to explore a little more comprehensively. And why don't you give it a listen? And I just happened to be going on a road trip, so I binged the whole thing and going up to 5.
Wow.
And it was exactly what she described. It was fascinating, compelling, bewildering. And with the escalating series of absurdities.
It's interesting because it was produced with NBC News Studios,
Yes.
which I hadn't heard of being involved in the entertainment side of it.
Yes, that's
and
right.
of course, Dateline.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the podcast is fascinating. And when you started to do the show and when you went back to it, did you return to the podcast and get little nuggets like sometimes you would with a book if a movie's based on a book or something?
Oh, heavily, every day.
Yeah.
I mind it blind. I mean, the thing, yes, every day as a reference. I mean, if not for mannerisms, just something that I might have forgotten, or just to hear the the intonation of her voice, and the Dateline episode as well.
Right.
Oh, yeah. All this daily. I was digging around in there for something.
All the little nuances you do in this, the hands, I thought was so key too, and everything. How do you get into that? How do you dive in? You know, what's your process, as they say in acting here?
I think it's kind of the same for me. It starts out as an exploration, sort of, an examination. I like to. It's probably one of my favorite things about the job is the research. Digging into whatever materials exist in the public record. In this case, it was court documents, and it was her own testimony and interviews that she'd done with the police and the media, and whatever it was that she wanted to put out herself as the narrative.
Right.
So that's what I relied on heavily. And we had this wonderful research team who were speaking to immediate family members of both the Faria family and Pam Hupp's family, and their friends, anybody who was directly linked to the case for little, intimate bits of information and people's experiences and how they're feeling and what's happened since, that sort of filled in the blanks for us in telling the story and in, trying to figure out how to play her as we went along.
It's so convoluted, this case, the way it goes in and out and zigs and zags, and still is doing that about all these connections and murders and things. It's kind of delicious territory to...
stranger than fiction, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't, if you made this up.
They tell you to pull the reins back a little. Now that's going too far.
Yeah.
There were things that I didn't know about, like the ironing of the money, for example, which is, I thought, wow, we're going a little too far here, but it was that was factual.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Did you have any desire to connect with her or anything like that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I wanted to rely strictly on, again, the materials of the public record, and I wanted to play the person who was portrayed in the, or presented rather, in the podcast and in the Dateline episode.
Right.
I wanted to adhere to that and the facts of the case, because, we're talking about a real person who is living, who's, as you said, her case is ongoing.
Right.
And she was, recently indicted last autumn for the murder of Betsy Faria, and I just wanted to be careful and respectful, and so it seemed that was the best way to ensure that I did no harm.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense in this case, to be sure. This is following Judy, obviously another real life person we know much better than I knew Pam Hupp, but Judy Garland. But what is the connection there? This is the first acting thing I've seen you do since that movie. And, you're playing two characters who were alive. So what are the responsibilities? What's the challenge of that, in doing that?
Well, you're right. I think the responsibility is obviously different. You want to adhere to the truthful narrative, and then fill in the blanks in the story where there's the unknown by, responsibly doing your homework. I was fascinated by both of them for different reasons. And I think both of their stories illuminate something about society in general that's really important. And I think it's easy to I don't know, in reflecting on both of their stories, it sort of opens up a bigger conversation in some way. Very different, obviously.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think important conversations to have.
Yeah. I mean, taking on Judy was, people go like, oh my God, everybody knows her and has an opinion and all of that. You emerged triumphant from that movie in that role, and it was, you were just there and did your own singing, which to me is even another amazing challenge, and you pulled it off. We know you can sing, but to sing like her.
Thank you.
And do it live.
Thank you. No, it's I didn't think of that experience. It was really different. It was just an experiment. It was an exploration. It was, about understanding and empathy, and it was this celebration. It was a shared celebration. Everybody on the set, the cast, the crew, all of us there, motivated by the same thing: admiration and love and appreciation So it was quite different. It didn't
Yeah.
feel like traditional, going to make a film or playing a character. It wasn't like that at all.
Yeah.
It was, it was much more profound to me personally.
Yeah. Do you take any of these roles that you play, do you take them home? Or can you leave them at the office, as they say?
Oh, I don't want to leave them at the office. The whole fun of it is that, how much better can you understand?
Yeah.
And it's the mining of information. And so when you finish it the day, I like to go home and start digging around again to see if there's anything that I missed. And if there's something that I have a question about for tomorrow's work, then I'd like to dig a little more and see if there's something that might inform a decision the next day, or is there something that could make this, a more important moment.
Yeah.
So I like to hoard, so to speak, the information and immerse myself more deeply every day. So I don't want to leave it at the office. I like being immersed in the materials. I like that because it just it makes it so much easier to transcend my own personal reality to tell whatever the story is that you're trying to tell in that moment.
Yeah. You're a producer on this as well.
Yeah.
Executive producer.
Mm-hmm.
Is that important to you?
Yes. Oh, yes, definitely. It's not my first experience as a producer.
Right.
I've produced several things, but this is my first with my production company, Big Picture Company.
Right.
And
yeah.
What I love about it is it's soup to nuts. I
Yeah.
love that you collaborate on the project and you cast the project with your dream come true, hope for cast, and then you have your fingers in every pie. And I like to call it quality control, because along with my my producing partner Carmela Casanelli, we're kind of perfectionists.
Right.
And so it's fun to be able to say, if we can make it just this much better, if there is any possible way that we could change this decision and make this more, then why wouldn't we?
Right.
Why wouldn't we?
I love the way it opens too, sort of Pam vision. I heard,
Yes.
Panavision.
Yes, Pam vision. Yes.
But it's light in tone,
Mhm.
and I have my perfect life and all of that, and this show kind of like balances that, which is a tricky souffle to bake.
Yeah.
And it does so successfully.
Thank you.
Was that difficult to achieve that exact tone that you wanted to get here?
It was kind of, it was essential, really, because in telling the story, we didn't want to just sort of present again what had already been done so well by Dateline in the telling of the story.
Right.
We wanted to, in some way, illuminate the absurdity of it so you can better appreciate how it deviates from the norm. And it can illuminate these bigger social issues about confirmation bias and personal bias and how it comes into play in the criminal justice system, about the presumptions that we make about the information that's in front of us based on our own experiences, what we think we know about someone, and how we can all interpret the very same information, evidence, for example, sitting in front of us so very differently based on our personal experiences. It felt like it was really important to allow for the levity, which is inherent in the telling of the story through Pam's words. Her narrative, her presentation of the narrative is comical when you look at it at face value, and showing it with levity in the way that you described it allows you to recognize just how kind of unusual and peculiar this particular case was, and to ask yourself more deeply and to open the conversation about how does that happen, and what's going wrong here? What are we doing wrong for something like this to happen, for a person to go under the radar for such a long period of time when the evidence seems to be sort of self-evident, so to speak.
Which is really interesting. You know what's interesting to me? I alluded to it. This is a network show,
Yes.
NBC. Although
Yes.
it goes to the next day on Peacock, they have their streaming. They have their cake and eat it too now.
2022.
But we don't see on network television anything outside of the kind of procedural in terms of the hour dramas and that sort of thing. This is totally different. It's so refreshing to see a network tackle it.
Well, testimony to, I mean, testament to NBC branching out, because that's what was. But, Susan Rovner and Lisa Katz and Liz, all of them jumped on board and were very excited to try something different. And they gave us creative license in making these decisions, and they trusted us.
But so many big stars, Oscar winners like you and things, seem to jump into the streaming world immediately. And I thought this was great, that because, networks are sort of like, they have a huge reach. People don't realize the reach they have.
Yes, that's the thing. I'm of that generation, where you had event television. They played The Wizard of Oz once a year. They played The Sound of Music once a year.
Yeah.
They had the Disney specials on Sundays. And, if you weren't home for it at that time, too bad for you until next year. And there was something that made it so special. There was something so special about that giddiness that you had, knowing that you had to be home by 6:30 to see Tinkerbell do her, wave her wand or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And there was something that, I don't know, it was just so cool how it brought people together. We were all kind of watching the same thing. And the next day at work, the conversation was all about that thing.
Yeah.
I guess Dallas in the 80s was one of the big television phenomenons.
Huge.
Who shot JR? Everybody talking about it at the water cooler. And the idea that, we might kind of be part of that tradition in some way. Was a really cool opportunity for me.
God, well, good for you, because I keep saying that. I'm not a binge freak. My wife is, but I'm not. I like to wait, and then, even though I have access to these episodes, they'll send you a bunch of them. I like to wait. It's much more fun to watch The Thing About Pam on a weekly basis, and then wait for the next one and wait for the next one and talk to your friends and everything. I hope that comes back.
Oh, that's cool. A friend of mine told me that his girlfriends are calling saying that they get together on Tuesday night to watch it. And then there's the Wednesday hike to break it down.
See, that's it.
Yeah.
When you watch all 6 or whatever the number is all at once, you don't really do that. You're done, then move on to the next, whatever it is. That's not this.
Well, no. You can, I guess it is a slow burn, a bit of a savoring, I suppose, if you get it right, I guess.
What do you want to pick next? What do you want to do next?
Well, goodness, we have about 13 or 14 projects going at Big Picture Company. We're working on the follow-up, another Dateline.
Oh, great.
So,
do you pick them all that you might intend to star in, or you're doing that for?
It's both.
Yeah.
It's both. And that's exciting, of course, to imagine, sampling from, these different projects, what might, come along, what might be next. But it's also thrilling to sort of champion young writers and directors.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun.
So you're carrying on, you're passing the torch as it is. Well, you're amazing. This is The Thing Called Pam, and unbelievable performance again from Renée Zellweger. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's nice to see. It's always nice to see you.
Absolutely.